Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Leslie Tavernier, and I'm so excited about today's call that I'm going to be sharing with you. We're going to be getting into the amazing, wonderful topic of polarity. And before we start that, exploring that, I just want you to know that what I do is I help women who are suffering from anxious attachment to an avoidant man to transmute their anxious attachment back into raw power so that they can actually have a healthy relationship with him. So I like to use the umbrella terms of dark feminine and dark masculine. And that is an expression of polarity, but there's so many other expressions of polarity, which we're going to get into today with my most special guest, my dark masculine man. Can you please introduce yourself to us?
Peace and blessings. It is Rakem Sekou. I am the owner or co-owner of my community called Pantheon, which can be found at pantheoncommunitycollective.com. And yeah, I'm a metaphysician, tantra practitioner, and coach.
Beautiful. So, okay, let me give an intro. Like for most people, when they think of polarity, masculine, feminine polarity, chemistry, they think that it's really about men leading and dominating and women following and submitting. Like that's pretty much like if you look up most polarity coaches, like that's what they're talking about. The man's leading and dominating, the woman is following and submitting, and that's all there is to polarity. But you have this amazing book called The Nine Expressions of Love, where you talk about so many other forms of polarity in addition to that one. And so before we even get into all that, I want to start out, I want you to define for us what your definition of polarity is.
Yeah, polarity is essentially just two extremes of the same type of thing or the same energy, right? And so, for example, you like masculinity, femininity, those are energies, right?
Mm,
Those are actual energies of motion, of movement. They're also consciousnesses within us. So you can measure or divide the energy of like gender, et cetera, onto a scale or a spectrum. And then the two most extreme ends of that are what we say have the highest or most polarity, right?
mm,
So it's the polarity defines how far away two things are from each other that are
mm,
on the same, spectrum of measurement or have the same unit of measurement or that type of thing. So again, when we talk about masculinity and femininity, those are the same quality of energy. What we're doing though is we're dividing them on a spectrum and we're
mm,
saying, hey, this part over here is masculine, this part over here is feminine, and we're separating them and categorizing them so we can understand how to help people function in relationships in the world, that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. So based on that definition, what are the benefits of having strong polarity in a intimate relationship?
Well, polarity really, what most people are looking for, polarity defines attraction.
Mm,
So like most people want to be like super attracted to somebody else, right? They want to feel that draw. They want to feel that energy that's pulling them to that person and that's
mm,
pulling that person to them. Well, what draws you to something is not when it's the same as you, it's when it's your complement or your opposite, right?
mm,
And so that's what polarity really helps us define. Like we're looking at two qualities of the same thing, right? And we're saying, well, if they're far apart from each other, then they're going to be drawn to each other the same way the North and South Pole are drawn to each other.
mm,
Right? So
mm,
these are two extreme poles or polarity of the same force, the same magnetic, the same electric force. And those two things are constantly trying to get to each other. So they have a
mm,
very strong attraction to each other. So the reason why people love polarity is because of the attractive nature of it. Now, there's
mm,
other applications to it as well, right? If like the whole concept of if you have a boss or supervisor, you don't want a bunch of supervisors in the room, right? You want people who are going to actually be workers, right?
mm,
And so there's some polarity there in terms of the, roles and responsibilities that each of these people have. So that's
mm,
another kind of aspect of it as well. But basically, what people are looking at, they're trying to find attraction for the most part.
mm. Yeah. Thank you. So I would like you to also define for us what you mean by masculine energy.
Yeah, masculine energy means it is. Well, so there's a few things. One, masculinity can be used to define the energy, right? That's your question, define the energy. but it can
Mhm.
also be used to define the state of consciousness. And the state of consciousness means, well, how is it that I'm going to look at the world, and how is it I'm going to choose to move in the world? Will I
Mhm.
move in a masculine way, right? So the energy of masculinity, it defines something that initiates in life,
Mhm.
that confronts, that reduces and divides and segregates things into their individual parts, that acts upon, that destroys. So anything where you're seeing aggressive, outward, overt action, right? Aggressive, intentional, overt action can be defined as masculine. So, if somebody walks up to somebody else and slaps them across the face, that was an expression of masculine energy, right? Or if somebody said, "Hey, I want to confront this person because they called me a name," that's an expression of masculine energy. It's like, "Hey, I'm going to go deal with this. I don't care who's around. I don't care what the rules are, whatever, whatever. I'm going to go confront this." That's what pure masculine energy is. One thing I want to say to your listeners is, I'm defining the energy. I'm
Mhm.
not defining like morality or ethics or any of that bullshit. That's got nothing to do with the energy itself. The energy itself is beyond and supersedes and goes, above, what your judgment is of the action, right? Some people say, "Oh, well, that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. Therefore, it wasn't masculine." There are a lot of dating coaches talk about that stuff too. They're getting into ethics and morality. That's a
Mhm.
whole separate thing, right? Like when women complain about men, they say, "Well, he's not masculine because he didn't do this, this, and that, or he lied, or whatever." Like that, whatever. You see what I'm saying? That's not what we're talking about. Masculine describes how you're actually functioning in the world. Same thing with feminine. It describes how you're functioning in the world, how your movements are, how you tend to address the problems and confrontations you have in front of you.
Amazing definition. How would you then define feminine energy?
Yeah, feminine energy. Again, it's on the opposite kind of spectrum of masculine. It's energy where the focus is more internal. So anything that maintains or strengthens something can be defined as feminine. Anything that conforms and bonds or commits to something can be defined as feminine. Anything that multiplies and increases something else can be defined as feminine. Anything that attracts, magnetizes, receives, accepts can be defined as feminine. Feminine, anything that heals and nurtures can be defined as feminine. So basically, the feminine energy is more covert.
Mhm.
It's not going to be, directly or overtly confrontational. It's going to be something that's done behind the scenes. It's going to be something that's more mysterious. It's going to be something that draws things to it as opposed to actually going out and getting it. So feminine's on the other side of the spectrum of masculine, and it's not going to utilize those same masculine traits and actions as a way to get things done in its life.
Now, what's different about your spiritual system is that you include a third element, which you refer to as androgyny. So, how would you define androgynous energy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we all know that when it comes to life, life is basically governed by like this trinity of energies, right? So when you look at, for example, the building blocks of life, you look at atoms and these microscopic particles are made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. So that tertiary element or that tertiary configuration is always present. So when it comes to gender, the energy of gender, yeah, you have masculinity, you've got femininity, but you've also got androgyny. And androgyny is different. Androgyny is when something has the act of changing or altering something, right? Or when it has the action of harmonizing something or synthesizing something, or combining it and repurposing it, or the act of enlightening or the act of creating or inventing. Those are all androgynous things. So for your users, let me give you all an example that I talk about in my book, Nine Expressions of Love, if you want to be clear and understand how these energies work. So imagine you have a slope, right? So like picture a triangle, and I put a ball, right, a sphere, on the middle of that slope, and then I let go of the ball. Now, the how the sphere moves can be signified by one of the three energy states, right? So, for example, if the sphere rolls up the hill, meaning it goes against the grain, that is an expression of masculine energy. Okay. If the sphere stays exactly where it's at, right? It doesn't move at all. You let go, it doesn't move. That is an expression of feminine energy. Again, that whole bonding, that whole not moving, that whole committing to a particular state or position, right? And then if the ball roll or the sphere rolls down the hill or down the triangle, right, down the slope, then that's an expression of androgynous energy. Androgynous energy goes with the flow, right?
Mm.
Androgynous energy says, okay, what's the path of least resistance? And it just follows that path. That's why androgyny is the ultimate, state of consciousness and energy that leads to solutions in situations, right? So it says, hey, this is where we got to go in order to solve the situation. This is where we got to go in order to solve this particular health crisis or this particular conflict or whatever. Like it's just going to follow the natural course of where the energy is taking it to kind of get through or get past that situation. When when you're just using masculine energy, you can't always go against the grain and like solve a problem, right? Or same thing with feminine. You can't always just hold your position, right? Like one thing you see with women a lot is they're not willing to like change their position. They have this particular view of what relationships are supposed to be like and what marriage is supposed to be like, or what a man's supposed to do on a date or whatever, and they can't get out of that mind state, right? But that's the expression of feminine energy. You're stuck inside of the way things used to be in the 1950s and 1960s. You can't evolve to a state higher and understand, oh, times have changed. One of the standard um, constants in the world has changed. Like everything's not going to be the same as it used to be. And so people have a hard time, adjusting are those who actually are steeped in a lot of feminine energy. And it's not the women who have that hard time. It's like men have that too. You see that a lot with like, like white men who are racist and they just can't get beyond like blacks and Jews and stuff like that. Like they're just stuck on that particular mindset. They can't get past it. It's like the world has moved past you all, right? But that's an expression of feminine energy where you're just stuck and you can't move past a particular thing. So those are the three energies, and that's how they operate when you look at them together.
Amazing. What's even more amazing about your pantheon of archetypes is that you define dominance and submission separate from masculinity, femininity, and androgyny, which is, you're the only coach that I know of that does this. And so, since these are separate energies, how do you define submission? Let's start with that, submission.
Yeah. Well, they are separate. So one of the issues that people have and why they're confused, and this is men and women, especially all these dating coaches who don't know what they're talking about,
Mhm.
is they assume that, well, if you're masculine, you're automatically dominant,
Mhm.
right? And women assume, well, if I'm feminine, I'm automatically submissive. And that's a real issue. As a matter of fact, that's created a lot of issues in our society where women are confused because there's
Mhm.
a lot of women who are like, they're like go-getters, they're dominant, they're aggressive, all that kind of stuff. But they're stuck in their head about this concept they should be quote unquote submissive and not really act on, who they really are. So, one of the reasons why I created this system is to like just to bring clarity to people so they understand like how this stuff actually works. Okay. So submissiveness means, how it's defined is when you are okay with the larger structure of a thing, right? So for example, let's say you come into a company. The company's already established, right? So if you're willing to come into the company and play a specific role within the company, if you want to be the janitor, you want to be an accountant or whatever it is, then that's submissiveness. Submissive is when you're allowing other people to actually steer the larger ship or steer the organization or steer the relationship because they have a vision and they have a particular set of expertise on how to take the entire organization or entire network to where it needs to go, you're willing to come in and play a particular role within that situation. That's what submissiveness is. Right? Same thing in relationships, right? So if somebody has a vision for the relationship, right, or they have like things mapped out. So for example, let's take for example like Mary J. Blige, right? She's a popular singer here in America. And she recently got divorced, I guess like 10 years ago or whatever it is. See, she was more so in the dominant position inside that relationship, but she might not have really understood that. So her husband was not somebody who was like really had a life, path or plan or any of that kind of stuff. So what should have happened in that situation is, her husband should have came in and automatically fit into whatever it is that she was doing for herself, right? The entertainment stuff and the acting stuff and all that. And he should have been okay kind of riding the train in that particular direction that she was taking it, right? So he should have played a submissive role in that relationship. She should have played a dominant role because she kind of had a vision for where she wanted her life to go, where she wanted her relationship to go, that kind of thing, right? So that's how kind of submissiveness works. Dominance is different.
Okay.
Dominance is when you want to steer the larger ship or you
Mm,
want to steer the relationship, meaning, look, I don't have the individual expertise to understand how all the intricacies of the relationship runs, but I do know where I wanted to take it. And I'm willing to do the things required to make sure that we get there. So, for example, if I understand that, hey, I want us to hit retirement and I want us to grow old together and have grandchildren and all these different types of things and build a big family and have land or whatever, like that's a person's more in a dominant role, right? Because they have the larger vision, one. And number two, they have the skills and capabilities to help guide the relationship and all the people attached to it to get to that place. If you don't have the skills and capabilities to guide the relationship, to get it to where you claim you want to be. Like you don't know how to do conflict resolution. You don't know how to communicate with people. You don't understand what the submissive people, quote unquote, inside the relationship need to be successful, right? Then you're really not an effective dominant person, right? You might have dominant tendencies, but you're ineffective at dominance. Okay. Now leadership is a part of dominance. You don't have to be a leader to be dominant. A leader's not the only archetype who's dominant. There's other archetypes who are dominant as well, right? So, for example, the leader's a masculine archetype, but also the lover is a dominant archetype. So the whole, the Orisha Shun, and within our pantheon, the lover, within the Kemetic, pantheon, Het Heru, you know what I'm saying, or within the Greek pantheon, Aphrodite. She's a dominant archetype. When you read the stories about Aphrodite, for example, because there's more information about her out there, you'll see that she wasn't listening to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like she was doing exactly what she wanted to do. She didn't care. Like all the gods would always try to get Aphrodite to listen to them and to follow them and to marry them or do whatever. And she's like, whatever, I'm doing my own thing. Right. And so that's an example of feminine dominance. She was a feminine dominant archetype. Right. Versus like somebody like Zeus, who's more so, in that masculine dominance. So there's different aspects that we need to look at when we look at dominance versus submission, and people get it wrong. They think dominance means you bark orders at somebody, and submission means you listen to somebody no matter what they say, and that's not what it is.
mm, mm. Wow, amazing. And what's even more amazing is that you have another category, which is neutrality or just, a neutral energy. How is that different from dominance and submission?
Yeah, the thing about dominance and submission is both of those, we call those positions or roles, right?
Mm,
Both of those roles, they require or desire their opposite or their complement. So
mm,
dominant people, like if you ever see somebody go out, they learn a skill, that they want to be a coach, right? They go out and they learn how to be a coach, and they learn something. Like a lot of these coaches you're talking about, they went out and they learned how to, they read a couple of books, and now they want to go be influencers online and coach people, right?
mhm,
So that's again, they want to be in that dominant position because they want to be able to tell people what to do and how to do their lives and how to fix their relationships, right?
mm,
But the thing about it is what's driving them is that they have a need to connect to a submissive person.
mm,
Like a dominant person without a submissive, those are people who, they feel empty inside, they feel unfulfilled, etc. Okay. Same thing with the submissive person. If I'm submissive, I need somebody who's going to like provide for me, give me a space where I can be and, where I can, do my skills and stuff like that. So for a lot of people, like they're out of work or whatever, and folks might say to them, "Well, just go ahead and be an entrepreneur." They're like, "No, no, no, I don't want to do that." Why? Because they're not. They require an existing kind of organization and structure to thrive in. So the
mm,
submissive person needs a dominant person, and a dominant person needs a submissive person. Neutral is different. Neutral is that person, they don't have a need for any of these people. You know what I'm saying? Like these are the people who are truly solo. So you hear some people talk about, like a lot of men and women talking about, yeah, I like to be alone. I'm solo. Like only a subset of those individuals are really telling the truth around that. Like a lot of people who are saying that is because they can't find a partner that they really love and who loves them and stuff like that, right? But there's certain people out there who like they do prefer to be alone. They prefer to be by themselves. They prefer to do things by themselves. They don't need reassurance from people. They don't need consistent, empathy and compassion from people. They don't need somebody to cook for them or take care of them or wash their clothes. They really don't need any of that. And they don't desire any of that. That's the neutral archetype. The neutral archetype of the neutral role are people who are like, I'm not really trying to be with anybody. And you can usually tell those people, it's not that they're not in relationships per se, but they kind of have a take it or leave it kind of attitude and perspective when it comes to it. Like they could be by themselves if they want. And usually those people are people who have folks trying to be with them. You see what I'm saying? So they kind of come to them with like gifts and offerings and all these kinds of things in order to be with them. And you talk about the womb choice relationship and the dark masculine and dark feminine. These are all examples of, that neutral archetype. And I know we're going to talk about that later, but it's
Mhm.
just a different mindset. They're not really concerned about being connected to anybody, and that makes them so difficult to relate with.
Mm, beautiful. So here's what's kind of controversial about your teachings, because in your teaching, a man can be in a relationship with a woman and he could be submitting to that woman. And so for a lot of people, that's confusing. Like, how can a man feel good and like proud of himself if he's submitting to his wife or girlfriend? Like, what, how can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I think the confusion with that comes in because men are not willing to acknowledge all the ways they're already submitting in their lives. So, for example, like I said, if you're working for somebody, you're a submissive by nature. You see what I'm saying? Like the only time that that's not true is if you're really in charge of a large part of the organization, or you have all these people reporting to you. Then you're like getting to express your dominance, but you're still submissive. You're still reporting to somebody and following what they're saying. Like, so men have this thing because men believe that submissiveness is connected to femininity. They kind of run away from that. But no, all of these men are submissive. All these men in the military who are listening to their sergeants and generals, these are all submissive men. Like, and so it's hard for men to really admit that there's the submissive aspect of their nature. You go to school, you're submissive. You apply to a school, you're the submissive one. The school's the dominant. Okay, so that's the first issue that men have, is that they don't understand that they're submissive all the time. Like these are roles that we usually go in and out of throughout our lives. You see what I'm saying? So you asked about like men, how can they feel good about
Yeah.
the submissive position to a woman? Well, first of all, inside a relationship, there's multiple roles. Okay. It's not just one role. So for example, when it comes to the sex in the relationship, you can have one person who's submissive and the other person who's dominant, or you can switch those roles around, just throughout the length of the relationship. And then there's in terms of the leadership of the actual relationship itself. You could have one person who's in that role, and maybe they're dominant leader, but they're submissive in the bed or sexually, um, or whatever. And there's all these areas inside the relationship where you can apply submissive versus dominant. Again, from the men's standpoint, they're like, oh, we want to be in charge of everything, the finances, the sex, the overall direction of the relationship, how we look, what the rules are, what the structure is. Like that's not really dominant. That's just more kind of arrogance and ignorance on the part of these men. Like, no, you're not. First of all, you're not all knowing, so you don't really understand how the relationship should go for the entirety of the relationship. You don't understand. A lot of these men don't understand that sexually, that they're really not skilled. That's why 70+% of women who are in these marriage and relationships end up faking orgasms all the time, because the men don't know what they're doing in terms of pleasing a woman. You see what I'm saying? So you have all these different things happening. And so men don't understand the concept of dominance versus submission. If men were truly dominant, and wanted to be dominant, then it wouldn't be something they would have to fight for. Women would be attracted to the fact that they are dominant, and the woman would automatically submit. And the men would only attract submissive women. So if I'm a dominant man, that means I'm only going to attract submissive women to me. You understand? So like the men who complain, well, she's not submissive enough or whatever, well, it's because you don't have enough dominance and leadership inside your personality, inside your character, to actually attract that. And even if you were to attract it, or maybe you did attract it, you don't have enough of that inside your character to maintain it, right? So eventually her dominance comes out. Eventually her masculinity comes out, or her neutrality comes out, and now she's not really trying to listen to what you're talking about. So the men who are complaining about this are men who just lack the skills, who lack the understanding. No, if you want your woman to show up a particular way, then you gain the skills and the ability so that she actually does that. The same thing for women. Women want men to show up as leaders and to be more
Mhm.
masculine. Well, you need to learn to master, being a queen and being feminine and being submissive and all those types of things, and then you'll get that from your man.
Wow. So I'd like to get a personal example from you because I know that, you're a polyamorous man. You've been in a lot of relationships. You are in a lot of relationships with women. And I know that you shared publicly once or twice that you were in a relationship where outside of the bedroom, you were in a dominant position or role and she was submitting to you. But once you were inside of the bedroom, you were 100% submitted to her and she was dominating you. So I know people are curious about this. Like, how does a man submit in the bedroom and feel good about that?
Okay, again, we got to go back to understand again what is dominance, right? And what is submissiveness. Dominance just means you understand where you want the act to go, right? So, and submissiveness means, well, okay, I'm willing to play the role within that overall vision, right? And so, what happens is, I've been with a lot of women who are very highly sexually skilled. They knew exactly what they wanted in the bedroom. They were willing to communicate that, and I was perfectly fine. You know what I'm saying, going along with that. It feels really amazing as a man, especially a man with a high level of sexual skill, to be with a woman who has a high level of sexual skill, who knows what she wants, is willing to talk about that, communicate that, is unashamed about it, the whole nine. You see what I'm saying? So, for example, the person that you're talking about, like she knew exactly like things like, what positions that she liked. She knew exactly how fast she wanted me to stroke her. She knew how long she wanted to do certain positions. She knew how long she wanted to do like foreplay and oral sex and all those types of things. And so, yeah, it felt really good to be with somebody who's so sexually skilled, who's very clear in what they want. And so she's in the
Mm,
dominant position. Now, is she barking orders at me and like demanding? Like, no, it's not even like that. That's the thing. That's what men don't understand either, and women is dominant doesn't mean you're yelling at the person or you're barking orders or you're being demanding. Dominant
mm,
just means like you have the vision and you understand where you want the particular act to go. And you're going to make the moves and you're going to do the things required to move things in that particular direction. So, yeah, I love being with women who are very clear and who
mm.
have that level of sexual skill. You see what I'm saying? And, are willing to take control and that kind of thing. Like that feels amazing as a man. A lot of the uncomfortability with sex is like trying to figure that out, like going through the stages of like trying to figure out what she likes or what he likes or whatever, and trying to figure all that out. That's kind of awkward. It's not really that fun. But once you hit a groove where she's clear, and you're clear, then that just makes it all the better. So yeah, the submissiveness is me kind of following her program, like making love to her in a way that she enjoys,
Mm.
and doing it for the length of time that she wants and doing it at the pace that she wants. I'm listening to her and I'm following her, and that puts me in a submissive position.
Now, here's what's confusing for a lot of women because a lot of women will say, well, I have tried to tell him what I want to experience in the bedroom. And when I try to do that, he gets really upset. So why does that happen, Rakim?
Why does a man get upset?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a man will get upset if you talk to him because he's, in his ego. He lacks masculine energy. He was probably in his feminine a lot or whatever. Yeah, this is just a man who doesn't get it. So, for example, if I'm a leader, right, and one of my people come to me and say, "Hey, I got an issue. I don't have enough supplies to get this job done," right? Or you're not giving me enough time to do X, Y, and Z. If I get offended by that, then I'm not masculine. You understand? Like I'm also not a leader. A leader is masculine and dominant by definition. So, that's a situation where I need to understand that part of being masculine is being able to take criticism, to hear what people are actually saying to me and make adjustments to that, right? And so that's what the issue is with some of these men is they're not able to actually take criticism. They don't really have, care and empathy for their people, like so for people in a more submissive position, and that makes them really bad leaders, and that puts them outside of their masculinity, and it makes them not dominant at the same time. Now, for
Mhm.
example, if you're willing to listen to people, right? So if he's willing to listen to what she's saying and try to make an adjustment and try to do what she's suggesting, because her saying what she wants does not make her dominant. You can be a submissive person and express what feels good and what doesn't feel good to you. Doesn't mean you're trying to control things or boss things around. You're saying, hey, just, slow down a bit or whatever it is. So, he's really having a hard time, or those men are having a hard time coming out of their ego, really developing their masculinity, and they don't know what it means to be a dominant person in that situation.
So my follow-up to that is that I know that with some women, you actually prefer to dominate in the bedroom. And so why is that? Like, how do you know when, look, I'm going to dominate this woman or I'm going to submit to this woman? Like what helps you to choose the position?
Yeah, I think it's case by case basis. Like the last person I was with, this was a sister who had never really had any particular kind of orgasm her entire life. Okay. Not even like really clitoral through masturbation. And so, in that situation, it's like I had to be more dominant, right? And so we had an interaction where, for the very first time in her life, she was able to have a full body orgasm, right? And she was able to do it through providing oral sex to me, right? So, but that was a situation where I had to be the one to kind of take control of things. It's not that she wasn't skilled. She did have some actually really good skills sexually, but she didn't understand really how to feel. She didn't understand how to bring out her pleasure, those types of things. So that's a situation where I need to take control, be the dominant person, steer the entire interaction, not just sexually in the bedroom, but like from the point that we meet all the way to where we're actually in the bed, to where she's going to be able to have the full experience. Because for me personally, I'm not really trying to be with somebody who is not really enjoying sex or is not orgasmic, because that's too much work for me. Like I enjoy being with skilled women, right? So I need to get her to an orgasmic place, right? To a full body orgasm. And like I said, our very first interaction, like kind of 15 minutes into her providing oral, she was able to have a full body orgasm, like completely uncontrolled, based on what she said, the absolute best experience of her life, sexually. But that's a situation where, okay, well, I have to be dominant. If the woman already knows how to do all those things and she's clear on how to make that happen for herself, then I don't really have to be in that dominant space like that. I can be, because it's fun to kind of, go back and forth. Like, because I know you're gonna talk about the dark feminine, dark masculine a little bit later, but like these are two skilled people. So like those folks, like they will probably enjoy trading off.
Mm.
One time the man's dominant and the woman's submissive, and the next time vice versa. You see what I'm saying? So it really depends on the individual, where they're at, that kind of stuff, in terms of where I like to be. But again, like it's really enjoyable to be with highly skilled women who know what they want and can kind of steer situations and sexual interactions to get where they want to be. Because now they're having all the orgasms they want, they get all the pleasure they want. You see what I'm saying? Like these are women who know exactly what they want and how to get there. I'm not trying to get in the way of that. A lot of men think like, oh, I'm going to give her an orgasm. If I have to give you an orgasm, then we're already starting off, at a deficit here. I need you to be the master of your own body, the master of your own orgasm. So yeah, it is fun to be with women who have that level of expertise and level of clarity about who they are, and let them be in a dominant position so they can get exactly what they want out of the sexual interaction.
So my next question then is how can women feel good about being dominant in a relationship? Because I know a lot of women feel uncomfortable being dominant. They are even the times when they attempt to be dominant, they still don't really feel good about it. So like how can women like embrace being dominant?
Well, yeah. So the issue is a lot of women don't know what dominance is. So a lot of women are dominant. They don't know they're dominant. But again, they think that dominant means I got to yell at the guy, I got to like bark and shout and all that kind of stuff. That's not what dominance is. So the reason why a woman would feel good about being dominant is because that's how she gets her needs met, right? So a lot of women think, I just want to be quiet, not say anything, and kind of let the man lead everything. That's kind of a fantasy a lot of women have, like let the man lead everything. And that's not realistic. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? Like at the very least, you have to have really solid communication with your man to tell him what you want, what you need. He's got to be receptive to that so you can kind of get there. But the truth of the matter is that dominance, like I said, is not gender based. And so if you're a woman and you want to get what you need to learn how to dominate situations. You see what I'm saying? Like you need to learn how to actively and expertly dominate your children. Doesn't mean you're yelling at them. It just means
mm,
you're guiding them and you're taking them from point A to point B to point C to point D. Like that's what dominance is. So mothers are dominating their children. You need to learn to dominate. If you're a woman, you can't dominate your husband or dominate your boyfriend, then you're probably going to have a hard time. Now, again, you don't have to be the dominant all the time in the relationship, but there should be aspects at some point where you understand how to dominate him, how to bring him to where you want him to be, how to bring things to where you want them to be inside the relationship. That's why when I teach the queendom class, even though the queendom class is not about domination, it's about teaching women how to actually, guide the relationship to be what it is they want it to be, right? So it's very important that women get out of their head that dominance means masculinity. It does not. Dominance means you understand where you want to go. You understand your life, you understand the relationship, and the relationship is here right now, but I want to be somewhere else, in the future, and I have to take responsibility for getting it there. That's what dominance is, and having the skills to get the relationship to that point. So as a woman, if you want success in your life, you need to learn to be dominant at times. Again, all of us, whether we're men or women, we need to learn all these things. If you're a man and you're not submissive, that means you can't learn anything. The only men who learn things are men who submit themselves to a master or submit themselves to the lesson or whatever it is. And that's how you learn to become proficient in that particular thing. Learning is a submissive, is required for as a submissive, right? You can't learn anything if you're not submissive. The reason why a lot of people have a hard time in school or a hard time learning is because they have this dominant disposition and they're not really listening to what the people are saying. They're not really reading the books to learn. They think they're the expert. You see what I'm saying? That's a dominant mindset. You don't learn anything when you're dominant. For the this being in Pantheon, but the most submissive archetype in the Pantheon is the monk archetype, and he's androgynous, but he governs wisdom. But the reason why he's so smart and so knowledgeable about the world is because of his submissive nature. He's willing to learn about every and everything. He's willing to listen to his intuition. He's willing to submit himself to the world, to the universal laws, so that he understands how the world works. Most people are not. Most people want to be in charge. They want their ego stroked. They want to be acknowledged, those types of things. And that's fine. But when you're in that state of mind, you're not learning anything. You see what I'm saying? So that's the difference. When you're in a submissive position, you can actually learn. When you're in a dominant position, you cannot learn.
I have a question about that because my youngest son has a monk mind. You know, in your system, there's the mind, the spirit, and the body, and so he has a monk mind. And when he wants to learn something, he learns every single possible thing you can think of about that thing. But when he was in elementary school, he was not listening to the teacher at all. Like he was just doing sketches all day long. Like in every class, he was just sketching pictures all day long. But he was learning how to become an amazing artist, but he wasn't listening to the teachers. So how is that?
Well, it sounds like he's submitting to himself.
Oh, okay.
He was submitting to whatever the voice was within himself that said, "Hey, you're an artist," or "Learn this," or "Figure this out." So again, just because you're submissive doesn't mean you're submissive to everybody. So that's also a thing that people believe that, oh, if this person is going to be submissive, they're going to be submissive in all situations to all people. That's not true. The submissive person chooses who they're going to submit to. Like again, like think about like martial arts. It's a common example I use. Like when you're the potential student, you choose which dojo or whatever that you walk into and inquire about getting lessons, right? It's not like the teacher can force you to come in. You see what I'm saying? It never works. Like a teacher wants a student who's willing. You see what I'm saying? Same thing with colleges and universities. Like you have to apply. You see what I'm saying? And they know that, look, if you pay the money to apply and you do the application, all these things, that puts you firmly in a submissive position. Therefore, you're going to be willing to listen and follow to what we say you need to do to get this particular bachelor's or master's or whatever it might be. You see what I'm saying? So the submissive chooses who they're going to learn from, who they're going to submit to.
Beautiful. So let's get more into the dark masculine and dark feminine because in one of your Instagram reels, I heard you say that the dark feminine and the dark masculine, because they're both very self-focused and they both like to be alone, they don't often come together. And so, my question is, okay, if they have come together, how can they stay together? Does one party need to agree to submit and the other party has to agree to dominate in order for this pairing to work?
Yeah, when the dark masculine and dark feminine come together, there's different ways that they can exist together. One is, yeah, they can go back and forth with dominant and submission. They can do that in the bedroom. They can do that in different parts of the relationship, that kind of thing. But they don't have to be in dominant or submissive roles at all. They can both stay neutral. So one of the things about like this is really cool with like entrepreneurs and like, like sometimes you see couples and they're like they each have their own careers. They're each out there hustling, doing their thing, and they
Mhm.
kind of support each other in that. To me, that's like two neutral people, or like a dark masculine, dark feminine. And basically, what that means is like they're living their own individual lives, but they're also supporting each other. So like when they meet up, they meet up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like where are you? Like there's no need. Like one thing with dominant and submissive people, they both have like kind of weird insecurities. Like I haven't heard from you, and when am I gonna see? Like all that kind of stuff. Neutral people give a fuck. Like they haven't heard from their partner in a week, and they don't care because they're busy. They're focused on their life and themselves. You see what I'm saying? So they one thing about like a dark masculine, dark feminine coming together is it's not going to be a lot of silliness inside the relationship. Like these are two people who are clear on what they want. They got their own thing going. Remember, I told you earlier that neutral people, they don't need other people in their life per se. They're not they're not like thirsty for that attention or thirsty for attachment or acknowledgement or any of those types of things. So because of that, these people are really free to kind of move and do what they got to do. And I can see them coming together and being successful because they can appreciate the other person's like them. Like, oh yeah, you get me because you're just like me. You see what I'm saying? So no, they don't have to be dominant or submissive with each other. They can just stay neutral, and they can get together when they need to get together. They know that they're alchemizing energy with each other when they have sex, so they give that to each other and receive it and that kind of stuff consciously. You see what I'm saying? And also, again, don't forget that the dark masculine and dark feminines, these people are sexually skilled, so they know how to have sex with somebody and get what they need. They're not dependent upon the person doing a particular thing to give them what they want or what they need. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's very easy for a dark masculine and dark feminine to come together. It just has to be kind of like the right situation and the right two people and the right timing for it to work, in my opinion. But once they're together, it's to me it would be no issue at all.
Okay, wow. So I have to ask you about sugar mommies because like it's great when the dark feminine and the dark masculine, they're both kind of equal, financially, they're both kind of doing their thing. But in some scenarios, the dark masculine man has no money. And the dark feminine woman has a lot of money and she, pays his rent or she provides him room and board. And at first it's great because he's with her a lot. He's with her all the time. And then after a while, she's like really annoyed with him and she starts to feel resentful and she sees him as lazy and pathetic and it just gets ugly. So, how can polarity help in a situation like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario. That's a complex scenario. So sometimes when the woman lashes out like that, she's lashing out because she's not being successful in her own right. And so
Mm,
because she's not accountable, right, doesn't have a lot of masculine energy, doesn't have a lot of dominant energy naturally, she's gonna look for somebody to blame. So that's
mm,
more of like a lack of accountability thing. It's more of like an abuse thing, right? When you look to blame somebody else for where you're lacking, right? Like for example, in the scenario you just named, I'm sure if her sales continue to increase and her money increase every month, where now she's making up, 500,000 and 750,000 a month, and it keeps going up and up and up, she wouldn't lash out at him like that.
mm,
So she wouldn't care. Why? Because she's having the success that she wants. But when she's having bad months or things are slowing down, that's when some of these people who lack masculine energy and they lack accountability will tend to like lash out and abuse those people around them, right? That's why being masculine dominant and even masculine neutral is very difficult because you have to really learn to accept accountability for your life and your successes and your failures. So if I'm not making money, it's not because of my wife, you see what I'm saying, or my partner or whatever. It's because I did not do something to make the money I wanted to make. You see what I'm saying? And so it takes masculine dominant energy to really, and even masculine neutral energy to really even absorb that. You see what I'm saying? So that's one thing that's happening. Um, yeah, and sometimes, again, I told you this before, a lot of times these women, they don't actually have love for these men.
mm,
Like they're with him because of what he can do, like sexually or whatever, or but it's not like she really loves him and cares for him. So, when she's having a hard time in certain other areas of her life, it's easy for her to blame him. It's like, no, it's like he came into the situation with no money and you still dated him, you still had sex with him the whole nine. But
Mhm.
now that you're having a hard time, you want to lash out at him, like make that make sense, right? So yeah, um, I think this is a situation where again it's hard to transmute that pain, that energy, that emotion, and take responsibility and accountability. And these folks are just lashing out at other people.
Mhm. Well, here's the thing that happens to some women, and this even sort of happened with your wife, your first wife, at one point, where some women will say, "Well, I was making really good money for a while, and then something changed." And I'm not making the money anymore, or the money has diminished, or whatever. And so she starts to think, well, maybe it's because I've ingested his poverty codes, because he has a poverty mindset. He's not making any money. So maybe, his poverty semen, his poverty DNA has infected me. And so now I'm not making the money. I know that your wife, Kenya, she had talked about this publicly where she said she was making really good money with hubby number two for a while. And then for whatever reason, he decided to leave and go back to North Carolina. And then he started having financial issues and she started having financial issues as he was having financial issues. And she felt that it was because she had this connection to him, so if he's failing financially, it then infects her. And so she had to kind of detach herself from that. So do you think that a poverty mindset, dark masculine man could cause a financially successful woman to stop making money?
No.
Hmm.
So, so basically, and like a situation like that, right? So don't forget what we talked about last time, that when a woman attracts a dark masculine or a womb choice, one of the reasons that she did that and what she's learned is to be a dark feminine and to come into her own power, right? So a lot of women who attract dark masculines have a hard time with that. They really have a hard time. Meaning the lesson you're learning as a woman is to find your own power, to find your own ability, to be able to attract into your life the things that you want, separate from anybody else having to be involved with it. You see what I'm saying? So that's a big lesson that these women are learning. Same thing happened with Kenya. She's learning to be a dark feminine. She's still kind of in that learning. You see what I'm saying? Like, no, you don't need this particular person in order to make money, right? But if you're not clear about yourself and your power, then you're going to think that you're going to think your money is linked to somebody else or this particular person, whatever it is, and that's not true. The only thing your money or prosperity is linked to is you and you alone. Only thing your happiness is linked to is you and you alone. There's nobody on the planet that has the power to bring you down or affect you negatively. Now, because you are gods and goddesses out here, we're all gods and goddesses. If you choose to allow that to be the case, then that's fine. You can choose to allow somebody to bring you down. You see what I'm saying? But that's it's still your doing. You know what I'm saying? It's not like somebody actually figured out how to be the author of your demise. No. So that's the big thing is like, if I'm a dark masculine, let's say I'm a dark masculine woman, right?
Mhm.
Most dark masculine women who are like in their power, like they understand and they have multiple lovers, so they can use to alchemize and make money and bring prosperity into their life. Again, they might have a favorite or a man who's a dark masculine or highly skilled or whatever, but that doesn't stop them from like doesn't stop their life. Like the one thing about these women, they will never be put on pause. They will never have their life halted or they will never have their life jeopardized or their money jeopardized or their prosperity or happiness jeopardized over a man.
Mm.
That would never happen to these women. Again, it's not that
Ooh.
they don't feel sad or be down to dumps or you see what I'm saying? Like that's a human thing. Of course they go through that. But at the end of the day, like these women are so focused on themselves and their life being what it is that they want to be that they're not going to allow one relationship or one connection to ruin everything.
Mm.
Like there's women who like they crash out completely, man. You see what I'm saying? Because their dark masculine is not showing up or not calling. They lose money like tens of
Yeah.
thousands, $100,000. Like that would never happen to a dark feminine. Yeah, she might lose a few thousand or whatever, whatever. But no, she's got other men. She's got other men lined up, or she'll just attract a new dark masculine or a new man, and she'll alchemize with him, and she'll start making money and happiness again, and enjoying her life again. Will she miss her other dark masculine? Sure. Again, that's a human thing. We all miss past lovers and people that we were really connected with. Like that's a part of life. But again, what it means to be a dark masculine or a dark feminine means you understand how to alchemize that and turn that into prosperity for yourself. That's the whole entire point. Like if you're with a dark masculine, let's say you're a woman, you're with a dark masculine, and you know this already, and you've talked to so many women that you're going to go through pain. You know what I'm saying? There's no way around that. But you're supposed to because that's energy you use to alchemize, and turn into prosperity and happiness for yourself. The whole point of being with a dark masculine or dark feminine is to go through all these emotions, which is raw energy, which you can turn into, prosperity for your life or happiness for your life. So that's the whole point. So yeah, a lot of women are having a hard time like understanding this. Again, most of them don't really have anybody they can talk to who actually understands this stuff. That's the issue. They're listening to these influencers and
Yeah.
dating coaches.
Mhm.
These people are completely clueless.
Mhm. Mhm. So, moving on, you mentioned in your book, The Nine Expressions of Love, that women who are womb choosing or choosing a warrior or a dark masculine man, these women tend to get frustrated because they want him to dominate them like a king, a leader would naturally dominate. They want to feel that energy from their dark masculine man, and he's not dominating. And so women get really, really, really frustrated by that. And I'm going to give you, so I'll give you one example. I'll give you two examples. So we'll start with this one. So the first one was, a client that both of us knew, who she was with a dark masculine man, and he had a wife. And so he had two women that she knew of. And he was like, he told her, I don't want you to be with any other man, even though he had two women. And she felt that that wasn't right, and he was being unfair and a hypocrite and all these things. But at the same time, she was insisting that she wanted him to be her king and lead her. But like she wasn't willing to follow what he was telling her not to do. So, what do you say to women in that type of scenario where they're saying, I want him to lead, but they don't actually want to follow what he's saying?
Well, that's a very common thing where women try to get a dark masculine to be a leader. So they try to take one archetype and like turn it into another one, or have it be a hybrid of two archetypes. So the dark masculine is a sub archetype of the warrior or soldier archetype that we talk about in Pantheon. So that archetype is not a leader. They're not dominant by nature. They're neutral. Again, what neutral means is like they're goal oriented. Like they go out and do their thing, and they're not really interested in being attached to people. By definition, they have no attachment to people or desire to be attached, and they have no desire to lead anybody. They don't want anybody coming to them. Well, what should I do now? What should I do now? Like these are people who are completely and totally independent, like really and truly. You see what I'm saying? So first of all, they're not leaders. Okay. Second of all, the person you're talking about and the scenario you're talking about, this is somebody who has a lot of issues internally in terms of their mindset. Like this is somebody who finds themselves constantly in and out of situations where they are just, you know, they're always the side person in a relationship. They're always with somebody who is, already married or, not giving them time or attention. So this is somebody who has a separate issue, like really deep mother and father issues to work out, a real deep poverty consciousness in terms of relationships, in terms of, happiness and that, like really just a lot of stuff they got to work out. Like this, in terms of that scenario that you're naming. Okay. So that's somebody who's got to work through those issues. But number two is, or number three is, you have to find your power. You have to learn your lesson inside these relationships. This is somebody who's just basically sexually addicted to this person. You know what I'm saying? And when he says do this or do that, and this is an important thing, I should clarify this for you and for your listeners. Yeah, it's not that a dark masculine man won't tell you what to do, you know what I'm saying, or give you an order, or say these are the rules or whatever. I'm just saying because they're not real leaders and because they're not really dominant, their ability to kind of manage that situation and manage you and support you in being successful within those rules or within those orders is limited to not there at all. So that's why these men have a hard time even getting women to follow them, is because well, you don't have leadership skills
Mm.
because you'll put a rule out there, but you're not going to actually support your woman in being successful in following it. You're
Mm.
going to kind of have like this immature view, like she just needs to follow just because of your ego or whatever. So a
Mm.
lot of these men who are labeled as dark masculine are not really skilled when it comes to any kind of leadership, any kind of real support for their woman of a relationship. So that's very important to understand. When we're talking about dark masculine and dark feminine, we are not trying to say that these people understand what they're doing or that they know how to lead or they are highly skilled in all aspects of relating because they're not.
Mm.
They're given this label by the person relating to them. Does that make sense? So it's like the woman dating the man she's having a hard time with and sexually addicted to, she'll name him the dark masculine, right?
Mm.
But to another woman, he's not a dark masculine. He's just John. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, whatever. We have sex, it's cool, whatever. I'm not addicted, he's not addicted, we're cool. We do our thing, or we relate or whatever. So again, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. So I think that's what's going on with that particular person.
Mm. So another example that I have, and I've told you about this in the past, is with a client, a former client who had an unplanned pregnancy with her dark masculine man. And when she revealed that to him, he made it abundantly clear that he did not wish to proceed with this pregnancy. He already had, I think, two or three other children with multiple baby mothers, and he wasn't really in any of those children's lives. And so he was just like, terminate the pregnancy. And she chose not to, which, that's her choice. But at the same time, she was also complaining that he's not leading, he's not stepping up, he's not, being responsible. And so she was very frustrated with him. And it got to the point where he didn't even want to like have sex with her anymore. Like she was just pretty much done. And that was devastating to her. So what do you say in a situation like that where the woman is saying over and over, like, I want him to lead me and he's not? What do you say to women in that scenario?
Yeah, same thing. Like these particular men are not leaders. You know, that's all I can really say about it is they're not leaders. They have no interest in leading. Like a woman thinking that she's going to force a dark masculine to be with her by having his child is comical. You see what I'm saying? Like again, these aren't you can't change his nature like that. Now he can change his nature if he decides that he wants to grow and develop leadership skills or develop husband skills or develop father skills or whatever, then that can be a journey that he takes himself and the woman can be a part of that. You see what I'm saying? But like for a woman to believe that, she's going to make him commit or be closer to him or whatever by having his child, especially if he didn't want to have the child, is ridiculous. It's just, it kind of puts her in a situation where, it's manipulative and abusive for her to have the child with that expectation. It's and with the I'm not going to even say hope, but with the expectation that he changes. That's not right. That's not how human beings change. We don't change because of that. We either have that gene within us, or we decide we're going to take on that initiation ourselves and become that particular kind of man or woman.
Beautiful. Also, you mentioned that when the feminine chooses the masculine, as per the feminine choice paradigm, which you and your wife teach about, you said that in all four of the pairings, because it's not just, leader, devotee, or king, queen. That's one pairing. There's three others. You said like no matter how the feminine is choosing the masculine is dominating in some way, shape, or form. So can you touch on that briefly?
That the masculine is dominating.
Yeah, so when the with the womb choice, the womb choice masculine dominates in a particular way. The support choice, the leader, the king dominates in a particular like they all you said this in the book, they all kind of dominate, not as strong as the king, but in some kind of way, if the feminine is choosing them and they choose her back, they are dominating her in some kind of way.
Well, it goes back to my example from before. So if you come to me and you
Mhm.
say, Rakim, I want to be with you, right?
Mhm.
That's really it really puts you in a submissive position
Mhm.
automatically. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I mean by the dominant thing. It's not that the feminine or that masculine is automatically dominant per se,
Mhm.
but by the woman coming to him. And look, so let's be clear about the feminine choice paradigm. The feminine choice paradigm doesn't mean the woman approaches the man per se, right? It just means that she decides that, yes, I want to be with him. And she might give some indications that that's the case. Like she might smile at him a little bit longer, or make eye contact, or, make herself available to him or whatever like that. So it's still, with the feminine choice paradigm, it's still the man approaching or the man pursuing. You see what I'm saying? So in that case, if the woman's choosing, right? Like the act of choosing kind of slightly puts the man in a dominant position. But if the man is going to pursue her, that tilts the scale back to where now she's back in potentially a dominant position. You see what I'm saying? Because now he's pursuing her, she's acting like she didn't really even look at him like that or whatever, and they play like this courting game back and forth. So again, when I was saying in the book, I forget exactly what I was saying, but yeah, like those little pendulums can swing back and forth, right? But it's really about, who's approaching who's choosing who, and making that move, and that automatically puts you in a submissive position if you're the one pursuing and choosing, and you're more so in a dominant position if you're the one being chosen.
Okay. I think what I remember is that you had said something about how like the warrior or the soldier dominates the woman sexually, and the king or the leader, he dominates in terms of like managing the household, and the monk or the guru, he dominates in terms of like he has intellectual dominance over her, and um, the manifestation choice, the magician, the negotiator,
Uh,
he might dominate financially. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, so that's talking about each of those particular archetypes have a particular expertise in a
Hmm.
particular thing. So the leader is, his expertise is leadership, is organization, right? And so when it comes to anything about that, then yes, he will be in a dominant position. With the warrior, it's true about the sexual part, but it's also true that what the his expertise is really like courage, is really like energy transmutation, is really like engaging, in conflict and war. You see what I'm saying? So that's really like where he dominates in. Yeah, that could translate sexually, like in the bedroom as well.
Hmm.
But again, if he's with a dark feminine, then she might be more dominant in the bedroom. With the negotiator archetype and the manifestation choice, like, these are men who tend to have a high level of understanding of how the world works. Like they're really good with like money, they're really good with like commerce and those types of things. So oftentimes a woman is going to, want to learn from him or want to allow him to lead in those particular areas. But like even in that scenario, like the manifestation choice, like he might have the money and have the expertise, but he still ends up getting dominated by the lover archetype, who basically tells him how to spend it and where to spend it, and that kind of stuff. You see what I'm saying? So he knows how to make money, yes. So if she wants to learn to make money, or be proficient in that particular field or skill, then yeah, she would have to submit to him to learn that. Or what she could just do, what she normally does, is just let him go make the money, and then she takes control of the money and has him spend it on her the way she wants. With the crown choice, his expertise is like, it could be like spirituality or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, in that particular, you know, field or area, he's going to have dominance, right? But again, a woman could choose, she could choose to be with a crown choice, and she could still kind of control the relationship, even though he has this high level of expertise. You see what I'm saying? So it can go either way.
Okay.
Really got to look at the individual archetypes of each person in the relationship. So, for example, the woman's got like visionary, or she's got lover, or she's got leader in her chart. Chances are she's going to be more dominant in the relationship. And she's got devotee and monk, and she's got negotiator, she's probably going to be more submissive. And she's got, soldier and conservation and peacekeeper, she's probably going to be more neutral.
Mm, beautiful. And that reminds me that you have this amazing tool called Seku Numerology. SekuNumerology.com is the website. And that's where couples can get a compatibility report, which is based on their date of birth and which hemisphere they were born in. And they can then figure out like who tends to be more dominant and in which area, who tends to be more submissive and in which area, who tends to be more neutral and in which area. And they can also like just get a score, a compatibility score. So would you like to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like I said, Seika numerology, or you can go to the other URL, 53kv.com. But I have a compatibility report there, and we basically just take your date of birth, your sex assigned of birth, and your hemisphere of birth, and we're able to tell you if you're compatible. So we are able to measure both of you all's masculine and feminine energy, and measure both of you all's, tendency to be submissive or dominant, and then we can tell you what your compatibility is based on those scores. In the report, it kind of scores you based 0 through 6. Zero is the best, six is the worst, and you're green through red, so you're green, yellow, orange, or red. And it gives you a personality score based on, masculine, feminine. It gives you a role score based on dominance and submissiveness, and gives you an overall score or an average score, right? And so yeah, yeah, I invite people to come, to the site and get that report, or you can just hit me up,
So
rocketdiku at Gmail, and I run a report for you.
beautiful. How can this report help couples to increase the polarity in their relationship?
Well, the report by itself, it tells you what the polarity is,
Mhm.
right? In terms of increasing the polarity, you have to make that choice yourself as a man and woman in a relationship. Meaning, if you're a man and you want to be more in your masculine dominance, then you have to do things intentionally that are going to put you there. So there's basically exercises and processes that you can do to make you more masculine dominant. Same thing with women. If you want to be more feminine, submissive, or whatever it is you want to be, there's things you can do to actually put you in that state of mind, that state of consciousness and energy. And so, you would need advisement for that. Probably talk to me, have a session with me, and I could help you figure out what you need to do to put you where you need to be. Now, that being said, sometimes you don't need to make a move like that. Like sometimes you're fine. Maybe the issue is that you're expecting your partner to do more or be more than he is. And because of those expectations not being met, that's causing issues. So sometimes it's fine, like you just be like you are, let him be how he is, and then you guys will be perfectly fine. So we have to look at your situation and figure out what's actually going on.
So if a couple has a low compatibility score, like I had you do a reading for me and my ex-husband, and our compatibility you said was like the lowest score. If a couple has the lowest score, should they just accept that they have a low score, or should they work towards increasing the score?
So do you remember what your colors were?
I don't remember, but we had basically the same bagua, this like the same three archetypes.
Oh, okay.
And I just remember you saying inside Pantheon community that he and I had like the lowest score, like zero.
Yeah, because the zero score, if you have the same three archetypes, you'll have a zero score for personality, which is the best score that you can have, right? But
Okay.
also you'll have the lower score when it comes to your role, right?
The Dom sub, yeah. In terms of Dom sub, we were like the lowest.
Yeah, so that was your worst score. So you guys probably had a 6. So yeah, there's not much you can do with that other than recognize it and decide who's going to be the more dominant person, who's going to be the leader, who's going to be the submissive person, etc. So you want to make those choices and decisions inside the relationship, and that helps you navigate it. But it's really difficult if you have two people who are dominant, which you have dominant energy in your chart. If you have two people who are dominant, then they're going to tend to step on each other's toes. They're going to want to each steer the relationship in a specific direction that they want to go. And
Mhm.
that's where the war starts. You see what I'm saying? Whereas if one person is more dominant, is more submissive, then the submissive person doesn't care like which direction the relationship goes, as long as they have a role within it and they get to do what they want to do and they're taken care of and that kind of stuff. So a lot of the issues you see is because there's either two dominants together or two submissives together, and they have a really hard time acknowledging who should take what role inside the relationship.
Wow. That was exactly us. Okay, so if a couple has a low score and they decide, okay, we want to create polarity, we want dominance and submission in this relationship because we want this to work. How long do you think it would take a couple to fix that or heal that?
If the couple's working with me, we could get them going like 6 months. But if they're
That's
not,
pretty fast. That's fast.
if they're
So
not working,
if he and I had come to you, when we were still together and we were both like, look, we're both dominant. We both have like two different visions for like I wanted like polyamory and he was like, we could do polygyny or monogamy, but we're not doing polyamory. And we went to war. Like we really went to war and we split up. So how would you have advised us in that scenario?
Yeah, I would have said, hey, you guys need to. I would have. We would have done a few things. One, you would have had to learn up level, and I know you're familiar with up level. Up level is a communication protocol that couples can follow to help them voice, how they feel. Right. Number two, I would have taught you all battery. So battery is a decision-making tool where each person can have an opportunity to be in charge of picking a goal, right?
Mm,
And so I would have taught you all battery, and that way you would have a method to make decisions together as a couple, right? So between up level and battery, that's like the basic set of tools. Plus, again, the compatibility report, I would have helped you all understand why you're having these disagreements. Like most people don't understand why they're having disagreements. They think it's because the person's being an asshole or whatever. It's not that. It's like you all's energy is conflicting. You see what I'm
mm,
saying? Like the polarity in the relationship is not where it needs to be, and you're on top of each other and
mm,
you're crowding each other out. So I would have pulled a report to help you all understand what the polarity is and why it's causing an issue. And I think between those three things, up level, battery, and the compatibility report, then you guys would have been able to be okay.
mm. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about polyamory. How can polyamory or open relating help to increase polarity between a couple?
How can open relating or polyamory help increase polarity
Mhm.
for a
Is
couple?
that possible?
Um, well, the way you increase polarity for a couple is the couple decides that they're going to embark on an initiation together where they play specific roles. And
Mm,
those specific roles are polar opposite roles, right?
mm,
So again, the battery, for example, the battery teaches couples how to play polar opposite roles in decision making inside the relationship. So that's how you do it. The open relating, what that does, and the reason why I think it's valuable is because it allows you to experience different forms of polarity with other people. And
mm,
so now you're not forcing your partner to be a particular polar
mm,
in a polar position to you. You see what I'm saying? So like
mhm,
one of the issues people have in relationships, they want somebody like really submissive, really dominant, whatever. And it's like, well, why don't you just go meet somebody else, you know what I'm saying? And
mhm,
have a connection with that person so you can get the experience of what you're looking for, whether it's leadership or submissiveness or whatever it is. And that way you're not looking at your husband or your wife and trying to force them to be that. Again, the issue with monogamy is they try to make everybody be everything, to this one person, and that never works. You see what I'm
mm,
saying? And so people build resentment, they get mad, they think people are not being leaders because they, are being stubborn or whatever. It's not that, it's not who they are. Like a
mm,
lot of men don't understand, you all are not dominant. You know what I'm saying? You're not leaders. Like very few people actually have that leadership trait naturally in their chart.
mm,
Same thing with a lot of women. Like y'all not submissive.
mm,
Not naturally, you're not a queen. Not naturally, you've got to adopt that mindset.
mm,
So that's the main thing I think is like people just like learning, you know what I mean? And understanding like what's actually going on inside these dynamics. And then you could put a plan together to fix it.
mm. How about if a couple is in a strictly monogamous marriage or relationship? How can they sustain polarity over a long period of time, 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, if you're monogamous, one thing you can do is you need to have your own lives. So make sure you're not morphing into this one being like the Borg on Star Trek. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to like have your own lives. You have to be able to have some separation, meaning like maybe you have your own bedrooms or maybe you guys allow yourselves to go do things separate from each other, like take trips or whatever. If you have a whole life outside of your partner, then yeah, you can maintain a level of polarity inside a monogamous situation. But the way most people are doing it, where you're on top of each other every day, all day, it kills polarity. There's nothing you can do in that situation. Where somebody goes to work or y'all go to work, come back home, and it's just you all in the house. You sleep in the same bed every night, get up, do the same thing all over and over again. There's going to be no polarity. You're basically one being. There's no separation. There's no energetic separation, and there's going to be no attraction. I mean, some of these monogamous couples, they're not willing to admit that there's no attraction. You know what I'm saying? There's no draw to each other. There's no sexual attraction. And they don't understand why that happened. It happened because you're on top of each other every single day. It that's what kills polarity. You don't have your own lives. You don't have anything separate. When you came together, the attraction was strongest. And guess what? When you came together, you all were separate. You had your life, he had his life, and that's when the attraction was strongest. The more time you spend together, the more you kill that. I think that's hard for people to accept and
Mhm.
understand because they hold on to monogamy so hard. Again, you don't have to not be monogamous. You just have to accept the realities of what it means to kill polarity inside of a monogamous situation. In terms of the other stuff, like I said, with open relating, like where you can have your own life and do your own thing, you can try to do that as much as you can inside monogamy too. People
Mhm.
can have their own lives, work on your insecurities when your partner's not home and stuff like that, but just try to have your own lives. That can build polarity.
Mhm. Wow. So I have one final question. It's not related to polarity, because there is a special place inside of the pantheon, which is for the peacekeeper archetype, which is neutral. It's not masculine or feminine. It's androgynous. And I remember you saying inside the pantheon community, you shared a post saying that I think it was during the lunar eclipse during the full moon, the most recent one, September 7th. You shared that, like by being in your peacekeeper, if I'm remembering it correctly, or I think you said something about having the understanding of peacekeeper, which is I create my life. Like just having that understanding, you found that you were able to shift your like 3D reality very quickly, on multiple occasions. And I would like to hear more about that.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a different topic. That's a metaphysical one and how you create your life and how you shift reality around you. So one thing a lot of people want to do is they want, more money or they want prosperity or they want a great relationship or whatever it might be. And what a lot of folks don't understand is, well, the key to making that happen is within you, right? So the question is, okay, well, if it's within me, like how do I do that? And the first thing is understanding, well, that you're able to do that. Like you are a creator by nature, you know so everything you're experiencing right now is because of what you created this scenario for yourself. You created your current relationship, you created your current financial situation, whether it's good or bad or whatever, however you want to label, but it's coming from you. So the peacekeeper archetype, she governs that whole I create my life concept. And basically it starts from, whatever you think about, whatever you desire, you can bring that into full physical manifestation. And that's just how creation works. That's how life works. Everything is coming from thought into full physical manifestation. So if you see it happen, it's because somebody conceptualized it. Every single invention in the world is somebody, it was somebody's thought first, right? They conceptualized it. All the cars, planes, buildings, clothing, everything, somebody first thought about it or conceptualized it. So, the peacekeeper is really about understanding, well, that's who you are as a human and spiritual being. You are a creator. And that by understanding the laws of creation, the laws of manifestation, you can create and manifest your life. And within our community, we've had so many people, like hundreds and thousands of people, be able to use these tools to actually manifest their life, create relationships, create businesses, create happiness, create health, and healing, all those types of things. And so that's what the peacekeeper's about. It's about really understanding that fifth law, the law of peace and detachment, which says, look, you don't need anything outside of yourself, and nothing can shake your peace. And if you can find that stillness, you can find that peace, that calm within you. From that point, all things can manifest in the world.
So did your manifestation speed up because you just like find it easier now to access the peacekeeper? Like, because that's what struck me about your post is that you said your ability to shift reality, it's like it became really fast. And so that's what I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, it becomes faster when you accept that you are a creator and that you are the source of all things you're experiencing, and you accept that and you believe that and you know that for a fact. Then it changes kind of how you move in the world. It changes how you treat your intuition. It changes how you treat your desires and those types of things. And so, yeah, the more you believe in yourself as a creator, the stronger and faster you'll be able to create for yourself, no doubt.
Beautiful. So, Rakam Seku, where can people follow you and hire you and pay you lots of money?
Yes, they can go to pantheoncommunitycollective.com, and that's where my community's at. You can email me, rakemseku at gmail. And I also have that site, 53kv.com, where the Seku numerology stuff is located, and you can hit me up there as well.
Thank you so much, Rakam. This was amazing, wonderful, fantastic, incredible. Our podcast episodes are like lovemaking for me. Anyway, so thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.